Welcome to Bari Banter, where we talk everything bariatric surgery with the people that know it best, the patients. I'm Shannon, and I'm here with my co-hostess with the mostest,
Lita. So sit back, relax, and remember, sip, sip, sip.
Oh, welcome, Lita.
What voice was
I
that?
don't know. It was kind of like Dracula meets me. No. I've got a good response from the episode that we released this morning. But I am learning a lot about other people, but I'm also learning a lot of things about myself. Like, I didn't know that my nervous words were, you know what I mean?
I don't know what you mean.
But no, do you know what I mean? Because literally I said that 20,000 times in the last episode because I must have been nervous. That was my thing. Some people say yeah, you know, or but
mine's a nervous giggle,
Yeah.
like my
But it's been great. It's been great because, like, you know, you get to learn these little things when you hear it over and over and over again. I'm really excited for today's guest. It's actually a really good friend of ours. So someone that I think has the best heart in the world.
Yeah,
so,
I couldn't imagine my life without her now. So.
Yeah. So
Our lovely lady today hitting the scales at 143 kilos at her heaviest and going under the knife in September 2017 for lap band surgery. 3.5 years later and a few struggles on, she's down to 105 kilos. Way to jump the gun, Shannon. But here she is, Carly.
yeah, no, I could get her up. She could just stand there and listen to you and be like, "Hey guys, yeah, that's me."
Ruin the big reveal.
No.
Like, she's already on the screen.
Yeah, she doesn't need
I
introduction.
I think as soon as you say lap band, everyone's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I know who that is. So
Yeah, it's one of those things actually, because lap band isn't like a big procedure like it used to be. It used to be the only procedure, and now it's you know, over like its sleeve and bypass, and not a lot of people getting around with the band. So that's why I thought it was really interesting. And that was like, I guess I can lead straight off with you, Carly. What is the band for people that don't know?
It's like almost like an elastic, kind of thick elastic band, I guess you could say, that goes around the bottom of your esophagus and kind of, when they do the surgery, it creates like a pouch just above it. So that's kind of like your new stomach in a sense. And then in your tummy, there's a port. And with that port, they can actually inject saline into it and it closes off the band to make it more tighter.
So it restricts
and
what you can
obviously restrict what you eat. Yeah.
So the food actually kind of sits like, so we have like a sleeve. Your sleeve is your esophagus.
Pretty much, yeah. So like we don't lose our stomach. Our stomach is pretty much intact. We just get, I guess you could say, a new one. Like it kind of just sits just above the band. And the band, when your food goes down, it just goes through the band. It takes a while to go through the band.
So is there certain foods that are easier to eat than others then?
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. I think I learned the hard way. I was warned about, you know, your carbs, as everyone is, and I think it's the same across board in terms of your band, whether it's the sleeve or what's the other one called?
Bypass. Yeah.
Yeah, bypass. Yeah. Carbs are a big no-no. But with the band, I feel like you've obviously got a lot more control with the band. So, you know, you can have your saline removed or you can have it tighter. So it depends on how tight you have it. But yes, when it comes to certain foods that are harder, it's definitely the carb side of things. And probably red meat. That's probably the two that stand out.
That's quite interesting. But so we're just going to ask you the question that we ask everybody when we first get them on. What was it that made you pull the pin and go down the line of weight loss surgery?
Oh, how much time do you have, guys?
Well, back in 1943.
I think there was probably, I'm going to say maybe 3 significant moments for me. It was quite a big lead up to me getting any sort of help. Back in, I'm going to say 2013, I actually tried Duramine, and I lost 20 kilos on Duramine. And obviously with Duramine, it doesn't teach you good things. So I put all the weight back on again. I then got into a serious relationship for about 3.5 years. And during that relationship, I just comfort ate like crazy. It was ridiculous how much weight I put on during that relationship. And with that relationship, it was a very toxic relationship, just mentally I mean, he never physically abused, but he definitely mentally abused, which just put, fuel on fire. It was just one of those things where on the way home, I'd pull in and ended up, in a drive-through on the way home, and then I get home and I eat dinner, and I was just constantly doing that, and that's where a lot of my weight gain came from. And then probably, I think it was towards the end of 2016, his family had come down, and I'd said to him, I think I want to look at doing weight loss surgery. And he blatantly turned around to me and said, no, you're not having weight loss surgery.
Wow.
And I was just kind of taken back by it. I just thought, what the hell? Like, what in my mind do you have to even say no? Like, that's not okay. But in that moment, I was very, very vulnerable. I didn't want to not be in the relationship, because to me, I just thought, no one's going to love me the way he loves me. Like, I'm not lovable the way I am. So I kind of let it go, and that was it. It got out of my mind. And then in 2017, in April, my best friend, my sister, and myself went to Bali. And at this point, I was probably sitting at about 140. And as much as Bali is such a beautiful place, and I did have a good time, I also didn't have a good time. I was chafing. I felt uncomfortable. I couldn't climb up the mountains. I couldn't do anything that was physical. We wanted to hire scooters. But when we went to hire the scooters, they were like, no, weight limit. And then we also went into certain shops, and some of the ladies turned around and said, it's extra for extra material. And I just thought, Jesus Christ, okay, way to make me feel great.
Yeah.
So at this point, it was running through my head that something needed to be done. And then I went to a doctor's appointment, and I had some bloods done. And this was probably, I reckon it was maybe 2 months before I'd actually gone in to see a surgeon regarding anything, or before I even really looked into it. And the doctor turned around to me and said, you are on the brink of diabetes, and if you don't do something soon, you will not make it to your 30th birthday.
Wow. I just got goosebumps.
Yeah, so I've also got celiac disease, and I also have a thyroid problem as well. So I've got a lot of, I wouldn't say things wrong with me, but I do have certain things that do cause weight gain, and that, especially when it comes to my thyroid, if that's not under control, I gain too much weight. So obviously at this point, it's my bad. I wasn't really taking my thyroid medication as often as what I should. I should actually take it daily. I was probably taking it once a week, which wasn't helping the situation. I come out of that doctor's appointment, and I sat down with my mum, because my mum actually used to do some of the receptioning for the Centre of Bariatric Surgery in Glen Iris. And she said, well, what if we look at weight loss surgery again? And I said, yeah, well, I don't think that's going to fix it. And she's like, well, let's just go in and see someone. I pretty much walked out putting a deposit down. So yeah, I just thought, it's time. I want to live past 30. I don't want to reach my 30th birthday and be overweight with diabetes, unable to walk, unable to exercise, unhappy. And yeah,
you just want a quality of life back.
Definitely.
So did you look into the bypass and sleeve at that time, or was it just he specialized obviously in?
Yeah. So it's funny. I always get the question, why didn't you go down the lines of another surgery? Honestly, if I knew now what I didn't know then, I would have probably gone for a different surgery. Nothing against the band. The band has helped me dramatically. It's pretty much lost most of my weight. Obviously, when it comes to these tools, you have to put mind and everything into it. And yeah, if I had another choice back then, I probably would have gone another surgery. So
yeah, because it is one of those things. Because with band, obviously, it's not for it's not permanent. It's not a permanent. You know what I mean? So with mine, I sat down and they told me about the sleeve and the bypass, and they told me the bypass can be undone. So that for me was nope, not go on the bypass because I
Yep.
want this to be permanent. I want it to be forever. Did that cross your mind that like one day the band would come out or you'd have to take it out and that restriction would no longer be there? And how did that make you feel?
I think at the time I really didn't. And this is probably where I kick myself a little bit. I really didn't do as much research as what I wanted to. I wouldn't say sold the dream because he was great. He was a great surgeon and he still is today. Obviously being retired, he's, I still see him as such a great surgeon. He's done well with my band, but I wish I had done my own research. I walked in, he had given me all these books. So I did a lot of reading, but I really didn't get on the internet and read other people's stories or, anything like that. For me, I think the fact that it was reversible and I had a little bit of control, it almost seemed more enticing. I didn't want to give up that freedom of not being able to have certain foods at certain times, which when I look back now is stupid. I kick myself till today that was the mindset that I had. And I wouldn't say I've failed, but I feel like that's probably been a huge part of me not reaching my goal weight.
You definitely haven't failed, so don't think that. You definitely have not failed. You've gone from 143 kilos down to 105. You lost more than that as well. So like you've never failed. I know going into surgery, when I sat down with my surgeon straight up, he said band or sleeve, and I straight away said sleeve. Personal reasons though, like there's nothing against the band. Like they're all tools.
It's a tool.
So it just depends on how well you want to work with it. And I knew that if I still had some sort of control over that band, it wouldn't work for me. Like I needed to be at the point where I had no other answers. Like, if I put something in my mouth and I filled my sleeve up too much, so to speak, that was it. You just learnt that that's your too much. Whereas with the band, you can take fluid in, you can put fluid out, like all of that sort of thing. Like I knew for myself personally, like I'd literally tried everything under the sun. And if I was to go with a band, I would end up still having that option where I could almost be in control of it.
And almost self-sabotage. To a degree. Because you'd always have that out. And that's, that was for me as well, not having that out. This had to be it.
And for me too, the idea of having a foreign body inside my stomach, like I'm the kind of person, I get a nose piercing or a like belly button piercing and my body rejects these sorts of things. So playing in the back of my mind, I was like, oh my God, is my body going to reject this port and this band that's inside me? So
some people do. Some people actually go into it to get the band and their body rejects it, that they don't lose weight. They end up ends up slipping or they get infections where their port is. So it's definitely, I feel like when it comes to the band, there's a little bit more high risk, which, I guess with all surgeries, it's the same, but
That was a fact I actually read because I was looking into it and trying to understand how long the band actually could stay in for. And that's, I want to educate myself on that. And it said most patients don't last until the 10-year mark. The 10-year mark is kind of like people usually get it out because they stop losing weight or they have issues. The complications is literally what it said. So for me, it's like, it was one of those two things. So
there's a lot of people that actually build up calluses around their band ports and stuff like that and scar tissues and
stuff. Well, they actually say that your first band is your best band. So my mum kept implementing that into my head. She said, you need to do this right because the moment your band slips or the moment you have to go back in and have it fixed, that's it. I'm telling you now, it will not be the same. So mum works with a lady who's had 3 bands, I think she's had, and she eventually had it removed and had another surgery done. But yeah, she was just like, your first band is your best band, so you need to look after it. So I was just like, okay.
I'm going to do this. I'm doing it right.
Pretty much, yeah.
So we did say it's a tool. So, is there, looking back, what long-term lifestyle changes did you make after the band to keep you on track once the band stopped doing what it was meant to do?
So I'm not gonna say I've failed because I haven't failed, and like Lita said, I have lost a lot of weight, but I feel like during the first year of having like the band, obviously you go through that honeymoon stage of, you want to lose weight and you want to see it all drop, blah, blah, blah. But I feel like after that first year, my mentality really didn't like keep going with that mindset. It almost went back to, if I can fit this through my band, then I'm gonna eat it. Like I don't know how to explain it. Like I didn't really make the best choices after the first year. Like, they weren't the best choices that I was making. And even still today, I don't feel like I do make the best choices. I haven't really made, like, I exercise. I won't put that down. I definitely exercise. But in terms of my portions and everything like that, I haven't really trained my brain to stick to smaller portions. So
do you still feel restricted with your band?
It's actually funny you say that. So probably the last 3 weeks since I've really started getting back into exercise and I guess eating. So I'm trying to eat more during the day, and then come nighttime, I'm like obviously have my dinner. I'm finding that my portion sizes are getting smaller, which is good. But yes, I am still very restricted. So I only have, when I first got my band done, I had 4 ml put into my band of saline. So that's not a lot now. Like, I don't think it's a lot now, but back then it's almost like your band loosens up a little bit. Like it's like when you're playing with an elastic band, it loosens up. So it's like back then 4 ml was tight, whereas now I'm sitting at 4 ml and I can sit here and eat a piece of bread, or I can eat, without any issues. I haven't had a situation, so you guys would know when I came up and stayed with you guys, I had a bit of a moment where things just weren't going down and like they were getting stuck. That feeling is not a nice feeling. And I think that's why I decided to have a lot of my fluid removed, because you can actually damage your band through doing that, like through forcing yourself to throw up, or if something gets stuck and you're trying to force it down with something, it like comes back up again. You can damage your band from doing that. But yes, in terms of restriction, I do have restriction, but it's a weird restriction. I don't know. It's almost like it doesn't get caught in my band anymore. It doesn't get stuck in my band. It's almost like my tummy has just kind of shrunk a little bit.
Yeah. Because I listened to a podcast actually the other day, and they talked about with the sleeve, because everyone says, oh, it stretches out and stuff like that. And this expert was literally saying, no, you don't stretch your band, like your sleeve out. It doesn't stretch out. Like, it might give a little bit, but that part of the stomach is gone where it's going to stretch out. It's literally like you build a tolerance to it. So like, that feeling of discomfort, you build a tolerance over time that kind of makes you go, I can push that a little bit. I can push that a little bit. You know what I mean? And that was, I was going to ask you too before. You said you weren't making the best decisions. Do you kind of understand why you did make those decisions? Because, like, I'll be honest, the other day I had a moment where I was sitting there and we went out for lunch after we climbed a mountain, whatever it was, and we ordered a burger each. So, like, Alita and I usually share. The burger came out, one bit was bigger than the other. And my head was still like, I want that big bit.
I saw you eyeing off my half of the burger, knowing full well that I wouldn't finish the bigger piece, and I didn't realize that I gave you the smaller piece. But I saw you, and I watched you watch me eating it, and I was like, "Oh, should I have given him the other half?"
But I was almost thinking in my head, does she realize she's doing that? Because for me, I was acknowledging that, but then I was like, why am I like that still? Like, that was still like, I knew I couldn't eat that. You know what I mean? But in my head, it's like I still want to test it. And is that, a self-sabotage mentality kind of thing? And that, for me, is why I'm asking you, do you feel like a certain amount of, like, your habit, like, the habits that you've implemented pushed you to make these decisions that you now look at and go, they weren't the best decisions?
100%. I probably made the worst decision back in 2018 when me and my sister went on the cruise. I took all of my fluid out, only for safety reasons, and 2, because I wanted to celebrate. And that's where we go back to having that choice. I wish I didn't, because that was probably the start of all the problems that I've had over the last year and a half of not being on the right track, taking all your fluid out, going on a cruise, enjoying yourself. It was fun, but if I could go back and change it, I wouldn't take my fluid out. I would have just dealt with it, had the food that I could have, still had fun. And then,
When you say for safety reasons, what are the safety reasons? Like, why did you have to take fluid out for the safety reasons?
Because we were overseas, so my insurance doesn't cover if my band had slipped and I ended up in an immediate hospital or, in a hospital on the ship or something like that because my band has slipped. They don't cover that. So Mum said, if you're going to go on this cruise, then you need to take some fluid out. And she said, just take a little bit out. And even my doctor, she said, just take a little bit out. But silly Carly. I was just like, yeah, no, I want to reward myself. I want to do this. I don't want to have to worry about, sitting there at the dinner table for an hour waiting for something to pass through. And like the level that I'm sitting at the moment, which is, like I said, 4 mil, I would have happily sat at 4 mil on that cruise, but I took it all out. I went down to 1 mil because my doctor said that you're best off having 1 mil in, just so that
it's not empty.
Like, yeah, it doesn't, I guess, collapse. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. So, yeah. So that's probably the one thing I regret. Like after that, that whole, testing the waters, I tested it way too much.
It's really, you're educating me a lot here, because like with the sleeve, it's not necessarily your foods that you can and can't eat. Like we can still eat anything. Like I ate some bread with my dinner tonight. Like I had soft shell tacos and that sort of thing. It's not necessarily, and like they say with the bypass as well, you get severe dumping if you eat really high sugary foods and all that sort of thing. By the sounds of it, the sleeve's got a little bit more lenience in the fact that it's not necessarily that we can't eat certain foods, it's the fact that we can't fit so much in there. But by the sounds of what you're saying, it's not even that. It's just that there's certain foods that is so restricted going through the port that you can't physically eat them, because you'll end up vomiting or feeling sick. Or...
Yeah, so it sits, like it's almost like, when you've had a really, really big night and you eat something that's so greasy and it just sits in here and it's just like, no, this is not okay. Like this is going to come back up.
In the morning,
Yeah, that's what happens. So if it gets caught and it doesn't pass through, your mouth starts, like, it's almost like when you guys have a dumping situation. Like it's not, we don't get the sweats or anything like that, but we start to like salivate in the mouth, and it's not a nice feeling at all. So
yeah, it is.
You've educated
that
me.
was the other thing that came to my head, because obviously a big thing with the sleeve is they take 8/10 of your stomach and they take away the ghrelin. Ghrelin, the hunger hormone kind of thing, where it's like you don't get hungry for the first year. And that for me was a huge thing, because it gave me time to not focus so much on food and focus on, like, my life used to be what's for breakfast, what's for lunch, what's for afternoon tea, what alcohol am I drinking. It took that away for a year to give me enough time to kind of go, hey, I really enjoy this running thing, or I really enjoy climbing mountain thing. You know what I mean? Because my mind,
friends, and
my mind wasn't constantly overwhelmed with the thought of food and thinking I'm hungry where I'm not hungry, and
So for me, I wasn't even 12 months out when we went on the cruise. So I was 12 months and like maybe a week or something like that. So I really probably wasn't in the greatest headspace still to be able to make that decision, and I really regret that decision of having it all taken out and then just kind of screwing everything up for myself.
It's one of those things, like you bring that up because I've been looking at Facebook today and I've seen like the community boards and stuff for weight loss surgery, and a thing I seem to be seeing a lot lately is I'm 3 weeks out, I'm stalled, I've stopped, and I almost now where I am, I understand that I'm still fighting, like I'm still going through these battles, like the other day with the burger and stuff like that, and it's still like, I want to say to these people, settle in for the long haul, because this is a marathon. It is not a
it's a life journey. It's not an overnight fix. It's not going to happen tomorrow when you had the surgery yesterday. Like that's the kind of mindset that I think, I feel like I was probably too cocky in the first 12 months. And I probably I was probably sitting about 93.5 just before my cruise, and I thought, I'm doing great. Like I'm going to go on my cruise. I'm going to maybe gain 5 kilos, but I'll come back, I'll put fluid back in, and I'll be ace. I'll be great to go. Yeah, nah.
100%. If you hadn't undid my sleeve at 12 months, I would have fallen so far back into my old habits. Because
it's funny because when we were looking at photos from our friendiversary post that we both did, like we'd known each other for 6 months by the time we both hit our 12-month stage, and even in from the 12 to 18 months, like physically, we both changed drastically. Like it's crazy to think that, that first 12 months really sets you up for what's to come next.
But I think it's also like, yes, you're losing weight, but are you evolving mentally? Because yes, you can change your physical form, but in order to keep it for a long time, you need to make those changes. And I think like if I didn't have my exercise at the moment, I didn't have my routines that I have in place, I probably would be, heading back the other way, because like I am now acknowledging I do have these little sneaky habits, like the burger situation, like always looking for I still have this relationship with food. And if I didn't,
the fat brain.
yeah,
It's
fat
the
brain,
fat
you
brain.
don't get, like I'm almost 2.5, 3 years out, you know what I mean? And I'm still having moments, and I'm acknowledging these moments and being like, oh, that's not good. No, that's not good. You know what I mean? And I'm not putting myself down for it, but I'm acknowledging it, because I think that's a real vital part of moving forward and progressing.
And I think a lot of people have to remember too, at 3 weeks, that's not a stall. That's just your body has stopped from the inflammation. All the drugs are finally worn off. Your body's actually starting to get into the swing of things, and it's gone, hang on a second. You're
starving it. Like your body, like that's what they always talk about. It's like when you don't eat, you actually don't lose weight. Like if you starve yourself, you don't lose weight, because your body goes, oh, when am I going to get food next? So, it's starting to hold on to it. And that's literally what's happening after the bypass, sleeve, band, whatever it is. Yeah. It's literally going, oh, I'm not used to not having this amount of food. I'm just going to hold on to whatever comes through that esophagus and hang on to it to dear life, because I might need it to survive.
I think Deb did touch on it the other day when we spoke to her, but she sort of said a stall isn't what happens for, at week 3 and happens for 2 weeks. A stall is what happens when it happens for 2 or 3 months and you can't get out of it. And then that's where you've got to sort of look at where you're headed next. So
yeah.
So you mentioned before that after your cruise you gained 5 or so kilos, and that's when you, in your little question thing that you fill out before you came on the show, you said this is where your life kind of really turned to shit and you stopped choosing yourself again. What are you doing now to start choosing yourself? What's happening now with Carly?
I think for me, so probably, where are we in? We're in September now. Yeah, it was probably April last year. You guys obviously met a certain somebody that I ended up getting a relationship with, and I really lost myself there. That was probably that was it. I wasn't looking after myself. I wasn't eating right. I was exercising, but I wasn't really exercising. I wasn't putting my full self into it.
You were wrapped up in somebody else's world.
Yeah. And that's my problem. I tend to get very comfortable very quickly. And that's where, I turn to comfort eating. I want to eat out. I want to, do all the coupley things that you want to do. But that's because I just wasn't with a like-minded person. He may have been like-minded in his own way, but he wasn't like-minded in the way that I needed him to be. So that's where I fell into that trap yet again. It's probably only, so me and my sister moved out in April of this year. And being that Lauren's probably around the same size as me, if not a little bit smaller, and we've kind of both got into the mindset of walking every day. I'm now doing Couch to 5K. Obviously we do 5K your way on a Saturday. So I'm just trying to move my body. I'm still trying to re-educate myself about the food side of things. I still have fat brain like there's no tomorrow. I made dinner tonight and I probably put 4 portions on my plate because I was just I'm hungry. I didn't even get through half of it. So I'm still retraining my brain in terms of the food, but in terms of exercise, I'm 110% committed to making sure that I move my body on a daily. So they're definitely the major changes that I've made. Living at home with your parents, as much as it's great that you get food cooked for you, it's also sometimes not a good thing as well, because you really don't get the say as to what's on the menu for the night or anything like that. And yeah, so
yeah, well, I think, and that's a parent thing too. That's first thing that came to mind when you started talking about the parent thing. Is my mum is known for
feeding.
I love her to death, and she's a mum, but it'll be even friends come over or anything, it's are you sure you're full? You don't want more food? And they say, wow, it's come up a few times and be no wonder Shed got so big. And it's I don't want mum to feel bad about it, because that's who she is. Yeah. That's the way she shows love, is through food and giving. And but it is, when you're at home, you're with family, they are very much no, don't leave the table hungry. Here it is. So you're right. It definitely would have.
My dad is. he will cook for an army. Like
Yeah.
there was 5 of us living at home. There should have probably been about 12 because that's how many people he'd cook for, and it was always leftovers. And it's like you don't need to cook that much. Like especially for someone like me, I've got a tiny tummy, and your portions shouldn't be that big. And it's just like trying to make sure that you're keeping that mindset. It was hard, but living with Lauren, it's a lot easier because I have control over what I'm eating. I have control over the shopping, all of that kind of stuff. So
yeah, totally. No, because it is having that control too, because like when it's taken out of your control, you've kind of led by others. Because that brings me back to another thing I saw as well, where it was literally people. I talked to a lady the other day, and she was saying about how it's really hard because her mum's still stuck in the old ways, and she's trying to be better, but the mum's still like, no, you don't want that. Reinforcing her bad old habits when she's trying to build new habits, but having that thing, person in your ear kind of saying, no, that's not what you want.
Yeah.
It's not what you need at that time. You kind of need someone to be like, no, you're right, you don't need that. But then also saying that, if someone said that to me back in the day, I would be like, you know what, I'm going to eat your hand if you're going to tell me that.
And I guess as well too, though, you touched a little bit on the fact that you still are trying to develop your relationship with food and that you've still got fat brains, so to speak. I hate using that terminology, but there's no really other way to really explain it, really. But like I'm almost 3 years out and I am still struggling with that. Like I don't think it's something that you ever, like I'm 32 now and I've been overweight since I was about 10 years old. I think Mum and I put it down to I was about 9 or 10 when I started getting grossly overweight. So that's something that I've been dealing with for 22 years, like trying to learn a relationship with food. It's not something that you can just give up overnight. And like if I've been thinking about food a certain way for 22 years, it's not going to just quickly change in 3 years. Like 3 years does seem like a long time, but compared to 22 years, it's not a long time.
But I also think it's a reward thing. So like saying that, I watched a video the other day about it. Was kind of like they literally had it skinny brain, fat brain. And that's literally how they had it. And it was kind of explaining why you shouldn't exercise after weight loss surgery. So I watched it because I was like, I'm really interested to hear about this. And it was kind of explaining the difference between skinny brain and fat brain, how like when a skinny person says I need to lose a few kilos, they look at the food they've got to eat to lose the kilos. When a fat brain looks at how they got to lose weight, they say, I've got to exercise a lot. And it was kind of comparing the two brains. But then saying that, like the amount of friends that I have who say, like the cyclists, they ride 80 Ks, 90 Ks, whatever it is on a weekend. And they're like at the bakery up in the hills where they have those big buns and they're like, justifying my ride. So it's like, as much as we say it's a fat brain thing, I feel like we all have that reward sense in our brain where it's like food, because it does have that sugars and those little things in it that kind of stimulate certain parts of our brain. I feel like whether you're skinny or you're fat, you still have the stimulation from that food, but it's just some can control it better than others. So
but I think it's a thing that we've always been drilled into us, and you see it so much now as well. Like food shouldn't be a reward, it should be fuel. But obviously somewhere along the line, for that to be a saying now, somewhere along the line it's been drilled into us that, if you run on a treadmill, it equates to 2 Tim Tams or something along those lines. Like obviously we've been, in the past, we were brought up to think if you run today or if you cycle today, then it's okay that you do eat the cream bun or you do have that caramel koala. But now they're kind of going, well, food shouldn't be a reward. It should be fuel for your body sort of thing.
Yeah, but it's a justification thing. Like and I know and Carly knows that we can justify anything. Like any human can justify anything. There's murderers out there that can justify the actions that they took. So like if we eat a donut, we're not going to sit there and make ourselves feel bad about it because we've still got to get on with life. So you're going to justify it in your own head to be like, no, but you know what? I did a 5K walk. That's the donut.
Do you know a donut is equivalent to like 2 loaves of bread? Just FYI. Someone told me that fact once and I was like, I am never eating a donut again. I'd prefer to eat 2 loaves of bread than 1 donut.
I don't know. Bread by itself.
I think we've all come to terms to know that I don't really like donuts. So
3 years out, Carly, from obviously having your band.
Yeah.
Are you happy with where you're at?
Yes. Happy is a broad, I guess, thing. I'm definitely happier now than I have been in the past. It was probably like just after things went south with a certain someone, I really went into a headspace of it wasn't good. I was comfort eating. I was buying slider foods, as we call them, those easy things that go down quite nicely, chocolates, chips, whatever it was. I'm I definitely wasn't happy then. It's taken me a lot to get to where I am now. In terms of happiness, I am happy, but I'm not happy with where I'm at in my journey. I wish I was a lot further along than what I am, but I'm making choices and better choices to make sure that I get there. So
I think a lot of people need to know too, though, you are in Melbourne. You're stuck in the middle of this lockdown. Like 2020 has been a hard year for everybody. 2020 has been especially hard for you with everything that prior to COVID was happening, and then COVID hit, and you have been locked down. Like everybody in in Melbourne has been. We've definitely had it really, really good up here in Queensland, but that obviously hasn't made things any easier for you either.
No, so we lost access to gyms. I'm a big part of our football club here in Ferntree Gully. We lost access to that. We couldn't train, we couldn't play. We were limited to 1 hour a day of exercise. So it's been hard, and we're still going. We've only, they've only upped it to 2 hours of exercise now. It's really, really difficult. It's difficult to get into the mindset of just keep going. We're going to be out of this soon. You'll be able to go for that hike. You'll be able to go kick that football. It's the lockdown has probably been made easy from the fact that it's winter. Well, it has been winter, and everyone knows Melbourne in wintertime is freezing. And that's probably been the only benefit of this lockdown being during winter, because if it was during summer, a lot of people's mentality would be...
Yeah, that would have been so much harder.
Yeah, it's really hard to be like, hey, I'm going to implement a new habit, but I need to do it for less than an hour, be home by 9. Wear a mask. Like you guys running around in masks. I've seen it with 5K your way, like photos of you guys wearing masks and stuff. And I'm like, there's no way.
There's physically no way I could do it. My glasses would fog up too much. Like
I can't wear mine. So I'm doing couch to 5K at the moment. Obviously, with that, you run interval. So every time I walk, I have to put my mask back up, even though I'm like breathing so heavily. And then when I'm running, I put it down, because you're allowed to have it off if you're running or cycling. So if you're on a bike or if you're completely running, then you don't have to
cycling through the shops. I would be like, you know what? I'm just going to run everywhere. I'm not wearing a mask. I'm just going to run up to the counter. Here you go. See you later. So is there anything you would do differently, Carly, if you had your time again?
Yeah. So like I said at the start, I'd probably go for a different surgery if I knew now what I didn't then. I'd definitely go for a different surgery, whether or not it's the sleeve or the bypass. I think, and that's not to make it the easy way out, because they're all hard surgeries, but the band, after your surgery, for at least the first 12 months, you have to go and get at least every between 2 to 6 weeks, you have to go and get checkups done. So you're constantly in at the office to get checkups done. You either have fluid removed or taken out. If it's too tight, you have to go back in to have it taken out. There's a lot of work that goes into the band. And I'm not saying you guys have the easy way out, like I said, but I think in terms of the mentality and everything like that, I think I would have probably done a lot better with the band or bypass. I say that now, but I'm sorry, with the bypass or the sleeve. Yeah. I say that now, but who knows? I mean, I'm a big believer in things happen for a reason, and this was meant to happen to me, and it's obviously, the universe trying to teach me something, and I've just got to play it out.
I love that mindset.
Well, kind of, that's what I said to Lauren the other week. I think honestly, the more bad experiences you have, the more knowledgeable you are. So you going through this now will give you a better appreciation moving forward with anything you decide to do. Because you have learnt these lessons, you've learnt these little habits that you have, you've learnt all this information that you will go one day, you probably won't even acknowledge it. You'll just do something and you'll be like, you'll do it, you'll succeed, and it'll be because of information you learnt when you did something that probably wasn't the right way for you. So I think it's really important. You have obviously taken that time to acknowledge these little changes, acknowledge these little bad habits and stuff like that. So when you do move forward, you'll be able to implement them into your own life. So on that note, Carly, what is next for you?
What is next for me? So I've obviously made it publicly clear that I'm going to have my band removed and go down the lines of another surgery. The plan was so I did open up private health insurance, and I needed to obviously wait the 12 months in order to be covered. However, things have changed financially, so I've actually had to cancel my private health. And what I'm going to be doing is waiting the waiting another 12 months. So come August, September next year, I'm going to open up private health. And then by that point, I will be making the decisions and steps to move to the lovely Queensland.
Yes.
Because mum and dad are going up there, and me and Lauren want to get through next year with the footy club, and then that will kind of be our sign off from there. So I'm going to open up private health August, September next year. Most likely get my band removed. There will definitely be a big space between having my band removed and having the sleeve done or the bypass done, whatever one I choose to do. But I will be having the surgery done up in Queensland. So I'm not going to have it done down here. I'm just going to, so that will be 2022, I think. I'll decide. I think that's the year that I'm going to do it. I don't know what's going to happen between now and then. I had a massive conversation with mum the other day, and I just said, I need to focus on myself and not be financially strained by the decisions that I'm making. So that's why I think I've put my head down, bum up, to really push in terms of exercise and retraining my mind with the food and everything like that. Like, I don't know what's going to happen in the next 12 months. I don't know where I'll be in 12 months' time. All I know is that I just want to try and work on myself. I want to keep the mentality good. I think in terms of like body positivity and stuff like that, I've really done it like a full circle. I've come back around, and I'm really starting to appreciate where I'm at. I look in the mirror and I don't hate what I see, which is kind of good. So yeah, I don't know what's next. Like, I don't have, a crystal ball. I'd like to say that in the next 12 months, I will be at my goal weight and I won't need to worry about having another surgery done. Mum made a really good point the other day. You've lost majority of your weight from the tool that you have. It is now up to you to make sure that you keep going. 12 to 18 months too late, but we've got to start somewhere, right?
I think you need to look at it, and Carly, I think you really honestly need to look at it. You've made massive inroads into the person you want to be. I think you need to appreciate where you're at, focus on where you want to be, but never lose focus of like where you are, because like where you are now, you've done incredible. And I think that's one thing we definitely do is we lose focus of where we are today. Like, I know I've done it. I've been so focused on the future and where I want to be that I lose focus of where I am and the appreciation for where I am today. So, like, I think you need to just take a second to be like, where you are now compared to where you started is light years away from each other. You've made massive inroads. I think a lot of the decisions you've made and a lot of the, I guess the bad decisions you've made over this journey will come into play further down the path, and you will probably not even acknowledge them, but that will help you on the path that you're on. So I think you need to really take a second to appreciate how far you have, because I think we can definitely do that sometimes and lose focus of, just how amazing we have done.
And you have done phenomenal too. Like, you've lost 40 kilos. Like, 40 kilos is a lot of weight. So don't ever think that never think that you've failed. And I hate that word. I'm going to start referring to that as the F word. We're not going to use the F word anymore on this show.
I like that.
But like, and anything that you do in the next 12 months too, like, focusing on body positivity, making sure that you're moving every day, making conscious decisions about the food that you're putting in your mouth, regardless of if you have another surgery or not in 12 months, 24 months, whatever you are doing now is only going to set you up for success down the track, whatever happens down the track. So you have, from when I was talking to you a couple months ago when everything was sort of, a bit crappy because of lockdown and everything, just the inroads that you've made in the last 2 months is just phenomenal as well. Yeah. So
you got to remember, you never truly fail unless you quit. So yes, the F word is appropriate because like there is no such thing as failure. If you refuse to quit, the lessons you learn today will help you succeed in the end.
Yeah. And I'm going to say the F word one more time because most people know that every podcast we have a little like affirmation card here, and we change it for every person who we have on the show. And today I put this one on there because I actually wanted to ask you this question.
And let's ask her the question.
Are you ready for the question, Carly?
Sure.
Don't think about it too much. What would you do if you knew you could never fail?
Oh,
go back to Bali.
Everything. I'd do everything. I'd get a new job. I'd jump on a plane and go somewhere. I'd probably I'd eat whatever I wanted to eat. I'd exercise. I'd do everything. I don't know. That is such a broad
It's a good question though, because I do like that question. I ask myself that very often because I think sometimes we need to realize that we only live once. You know what I mean? So if you're asking yourself, if you ask yourself the question, if I couldn't fail, what would I do? You also need to ask yourself the question, what's stopping me from doing it?
But you've also got to, it also makes you stop and think about like the things in your life that even though you're going through the motions, if you had the option to change it, would it? So like the first thing that came to your head just then was your job. So does that mean that like subconsciously there's something about your job that you aren't enjoying, or like, you know, you travel more. So obviously we can't travel at the moment. So, but like obviously everybody's dream is to travel more. It makes you stop and think about the little tiny things in your mind, what you would actually change. And it makes you think about where you could be.
Yeah. I think you need to just...
like this virus has taught me one thing, and it's that don't sweat the little things. And I think that's what I was doing for so long. I was, you know, sweating the F word. I was sweating, you know, the things that I was doing wrong. Whereas like I wasn't celebrating the things that I was doing right. And that's, I guess, the mentality that I've really tried to stick to over the last month or so, that, you know, it's time to celebrate what I'm, you know, achieving on a day-to-day basis. Okay, I ate that Tim Tam. So be it. Go for a walk. Go do what you need to do. Like, there's no point in sitting there and sweating about something that, yes, you potentially could have controlled, but in a sense, not really. Like, you're learning. You're a baby trying to find your feet. Even after 3 years, I feel like I'm still trying to find my feet. So, you know, I think
we will always be trying to find our feet, to be honest. Like, no one knows the exact mathematical equation to life. And I think it's sometimes you just need to jump on the wave and ride it until the end and just see where it leads you while appreciating each little turn as it comes.
Going back to the very, very start of this podcast where you were talking about Bali, Carly, I want to put it out there to the universe right now. Me and you are going on a girls' trip to Bali whenever we're allowed to get back on a plane again, because I had exactly the same thing. I'd be walking down the street and the Balinese boys would be whistling at me, being like, "Oh, curvy lady, like we like all that sort of stuff." And I was like, you know what? Or you'd walk into shops and they'd be like, "Oh, nothing for you here. Try next door, like the big person shop." So let's go to Bali together and just have the best time. Living our best lives.
Can I come too? No. I can be Shaniqua. I have like things to fulfill as well. I used to get King Kong size. Come in, sir. We have King Kong size.
That's it. Why don't we just make a weight loss surgery up in Bali?
It's kind of like your redemption ride, but like walking into stores and not getting offended by the really polite Bali people.
Queensland Christmas Party 2021 is happening in Bali.
Well, Carly, you are a remarkable human being. You have a heart of gold. You are someone I rate very highly on the people I would like to spend a lot of time with. So I do appreciate you. You're an incredible human. And thank you for coming on.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm glad I got to sit here and I guess say my story. I've definitely met my people through this community, and that's for sure. So I'm blessed in that sense.
Thank you so much for coming on, and that is another episode of Bari Banter.
Well, yes, that is another episode of Bari Banter in the books. We hope you got a little something from that one.
Head on over to Facebook or Instagram and check us out, or go to baribanter.com where you can watch past episodes, give us feedback, and let us know who you want to hear from next.
We love you all, and as always, please stay beautiful.